Originally made from stone, struck and fractured to become sharp, the knife is one of the first tools invented. Today's custom knife maker has a shop filled with tools to heat, shape, grind, and enhance the properties of steel, making a tough material even tougher. From hammer and anvil all the way to CNC machining, today's smiths make unique pieces for hunters, chefs, collectors, and home cooks. I'm Justin Lamoureux, owner, operator of Rainy Day Forge, president of the Manitoba Blacksmith Guild, podcaster, and finally, host of Fire and Slice. Over the course of this series, I'll make 3 distinctive knives for 3 people with interesting knife needs. Because of this, I'll try things I've never done before, and if I fail, I'll have to restart. There's no prize at the end, there's no cash, no scholarship. The gift I receive is a happy client and skills gained from making these knives. So let's get started. Let's light the forge. It's about to get hot in here. Welcome to the Forge. I'm Justin Lamoureux, and on this episode of Fire and Slice, we'll be making an 18th century French friction folder, the Jambette knife. This knife was important during the early days of Canada, New France period. They were manufactured in Saint-Étienne, France by a team of craftsmen and then distributed to the colonies. From there, they went cross-country in the hands of the voyageur. They were a popular trade item. An entrepreneur, entertainer, storyteller, historian, Robert Malo asked me to make him a reproduction of a fur trade era folding knife. Now, this opens it up to a lot of different knives, but the Jambette is my favorite. And I've gone down the rabbit hole with this one. I found a technique that I've never seen or heard of before, and I'd like to rediscover it. The scales of this knife were sometimes made out of ram's horn, and to give it its unique shape, it was apparently heated and pressed into a mold. So I'm going to take a small risk by doing this, but there's potential for reward. If I fail, well then I'll make a wooden handle. Whatever the result, I know Rob's gonna get an awesome piece for his collection of artifacts. Well, I'd say it's time. Let's light the forge and get this project started. I'm gonna use a ball bearing to make the blade. This is 52-100. And the issue with 52-100 is if it's not worked at a hot enough temperature, it could fracture. So I'm gonna go with 2 of them in the forge just to make sure that if there are any issues, that I've got a second one as a fail-safe.
This is a forced air forge. It runs on propane and air that's blown in by a fan. It can heat steel in excess of 2000 degrees Fahrenheit or 1100 degrees Celsius. I use a hydraulic press to squeeze down and deform the bearing. This is called plastic deformation. Pressure and different dyes help shape the steel more quickly. When the steel cools, it becomes hard again and needs to be heated inside the forge. It's a continuous process of heating and cooling. Finally, with the repetitive blows of my 3.5-pound hammer striking the hot steel, sandwiched between the hardened face of my anvil, I begin to shape the blade. I use different weights of hammers with different faces to move the steel however I want.
A lot of people know me as Rob, but I'm Robert Malo is my real name. Rob Malo is sort of my artist name. I'm also known as Thibert. Thibert le Voyageur is kind of a kids performer. I juggle, I play music, I'm a storyteller. So that's sort of what I've been doing the last 10 years. But I've got a lot of new things because I'm working with a young violinist. He's a young Métis gentleman, Alexandre Tétrault. He's known as Doozy. So we're going to be Thibert et Doozy. Still kind of family-friendly shows we're developing. For me in the next little bit is I'm not alone up there anymore. At the same time, we've got musical accompaniment with the stories. I'm also working on a tour of St. Boniface, the French quarters of Winnipeg, where it's going to be an audio with augmented reality components to the walking tour that has 12 different stops, really delving into French Métis history and also indigenous connections with the French Métis. So there's a stop where we're working with the One Arrow Reserve, talking to elders over there for Chief One Arrow. It's a fascinating story that I've been able to uncover through this project. And another one is with a friend of mine, Desmond Mentuck, who's an Anishinaabe, who's working on a reconciliation project that's going to be on the Archdiocese of St. Boniface grounds. These are massive projects, life-changing kind of things. But as a storyteller, makes a lot of sense. It's been a true journey of self-discovery along with creation. Which I think is like when you find your jam, when you find the thing that really gets you interested in life and you follow it, it leads you down these amazing paths. And I think that's all I did, right? It's just like, I don't think history is everybody's thing. Like, I don't think that's but it's mine and I enjoy it.
The initial grind is done, and now we could work on that thumb tab. We need to isolate a piece of steel, heat it back up in the forge, and then hammer it so it kind of mushrooms out so it spans across both scales. Then we'll use the files so we can carve it and make it look like a little shell.
An essential tool in the blacksmith shop is the vise. With it, you can clamp down on steel and strike in otherwise awkward or impossible ways. In my grinder, I have an 8-inch contact wheel. I'm using it to smooth out the profile of the blade so that I don't have any jagged edges. And now we're moving to the flat platen. Because this is a folding knife, the sides need to be perfectly parallel. And if they aren't, the blade could bind up with the scales of the handle. Instead of stamping my regular rainy day forge maker's mark, I'm putting the 6 first letters of my last name.
1, 2. Nice.
The original Jambettes had the name of its maker stamped into the steel, and I want this one to look as close as what I imagined one to be.
So the blades are tempering, it's pulling the stress out of the steel, and we can now start on the experiment, and that's carving out a shape of the scale. And hopefully when we press the ram's horn into that void, it picks up those details. I don't know what's gonna happen. We'll find out real soon. Crush it. Not gonna use it again. It's very flat on this side. Woo-hoo-hoo. It actually picked up some of the shape. You can definitely see the eye and the other filigree around it. You know what that means. I gotta make another one of those. It smells like pork rinds. When you open that bag of pork rinds and you're like, oh yeah, maybe I should eat these. And you smell it and you're like, why did I buy this? And then you eat a couple and you're like, oh, they're not too bad. They're pretty good. And then like 5 years later, you're like, oh yeah, pork rinds, I like them. And then you do the whole same thing and it's like, yeah, no, not good. Not good at all. Yeah. That's what these smell like. So it's like, kind of like the smell, but at the same time, you don't. And then you start heating them up in the oil and you're like, these do smell good. These guys are out of the kiln. They are finely tempered. I'm just gonna sketch out where my grind lines are gonna be and hit them on the grinder and decide which one I prefer. little crack. Any fracture like that would end up continuing and break off completely.
Like, what are you gonna do, right? It is what it is. It is what it is.
I'm so glad I made that second blade. Those little rosettes, they're too shiny. They're too pretty. I want them to kind of meld into the handle. The handle is gnarly. It's well, gnarly. It's ram's horn. And then we've got these bright rosettes. I don't buy it. Sure, it's gonna wear. Sure, it'll naturally patina, but these will last forever. And against the horn, it's gonna look great. I'll be placing pins here for a few different reasons. One, to stop the blade from swinging through, right? And the second reason, obviously, to hold the scales together. There we go, there we go. I'm going to touch each one of these pins with a CA glue, and it'll flow down and into the crack. That'll give lots of adhesion. And this type of glue it flows quite well. Let's pinch this down. Go. That went well. Now I must hammer onto it without messing up the rosettes. The socket for the thumb pad, slowly layer down until I am happy with it. One last thing to do, pack it up. So final Rob, as well as I think I do, he's gonna be blown away by this piece. The level of craftsmanship, the details, and the discovery of the hot molding, just the history behind it. I'm excited to bring it to him. Let's hit the road. Let's go.
What? Where is this guy?
Rob, is that you? Hey, you made it. I've got your knife.
Hey, it's my couteau. Let me give you a hand.
What's up?
It's ram's horn. Yeah. Chaque fabricant, all the makers had their name here. It's like Laramie, Lamoureux. I was like, Lamoureux, oh my god, that's so long. Yeah.
No, Lamoureux is beautiful.
Yeah. I'm glad you're getting it.
I'm happy that you found something that you really enjoy doing, and you match it up with something that I really enjoy, and now I have a beautiful knife that touches on my history, and that has all these aspects.
Ah ben, merci. Yeah, it's really nice. Thanks, dude. Yeah.
The dog's head, pins. It's pretty sweet. The shell on the back. This is appelé des rosettes. Lamoureux.
Smells like pork rinds.